The deal is done with every Dodge, Ram, and Jeep manufacturer is going out of business and declining sales month over month, year over year. Since 2021, we've seen Stellantis with increasing prices. We've seen the opposite, decreasing sales of Jeep, Ram, Dodge products, and now the CEO is paying the price. Rams have been some of the poorest selling full-size pickup trucks on the market, with Ford having record sales, GM having record sales on their hybrid vehicles, as well as electrified vehicles, and including their ICE trucks like this. Unfortunately, Ram hasn't enjoyed the same level of success on the sales of a lot of their vehicles, and without having drastic incentives put on their. The latest trends for Stellantis showing 17% decline in sales month over month, and this last quarter has literally been the telling and the tipping point for Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares. With 2025 pickup trucks sitting on the lot not selling, here we have a good example right here why that is. We look here, the Bighorn Sport Quad Cab 4x4, and it's going for a price tag of $69,000, and it's a very basic vehicle. Quite bare bones, and the value just doesn't seem to be there for a lot of customers. Jeep sales have been grossly down as well, and in the last 6 months to 8 months, we've seen massive discounts coming from Stellantis trying to pitch a lot of their products. The Wranglers are high priced and finally are pushed out of the reach of a lot of customers. And this all couldn't have happened at a worse time in the cost of living crisis. These brands just seem to be out of touch and out of reality with a lot of customers who are looking for a deal, when in fact these vehicles have gone up as much as 50 and 60% over the course of the last 5 years. And the Jeep Grand Wagoneer like this are priced at an extremely high price point, and it makes it wonder why anybody is buying these vehicles. I mean, when they're trying to compete with the likes of Audi, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz, it definitely is a hard sell. They're trying to pitch themselves as a luxury car brand, and yet not clearly in the same space as a lot of the European luxury vehicles that have garnered that reputation for many years. It's taken them dozens of years to develop that reputation. Stellantis has struggled with sales, partially because the over high prices, but also obsolete product line like this when they have new competitors with more interesting products available. The Durango is one of those vehicles. Now they're also looking at possibly moving to manufacturing facilities in Canada outside of the USA to possibly look at garnering some extra revenue, because clearly trying to knock down manufacturing costs is one of their biggest nemesis. That's why Stellantis was engaging what they call the doghouse, which is getting cost controls in effect. But how much are Durangos these days? Well, let's take a look. We have a Durango SRT 390T Premium all-wheel drive, and $105,000. That's right, 105 grand for this unit. Is it any wonder these things aren't selling? How about right here? Also, some of the worst selling products in the entire industry. We're seeing the Dodge Hornet, which is essentially an Alfa Romeo Tonale. And this vehicle on its own isn't that bad of a vehicle. It's actually kind of fun, sporty, and looks economical, until you have to put down the hard-earned dollars and pay for that vehicle, because they're not cheap either. And that's part of the problem. The cost of a lot of these vehicles is so far out of touch and out of reach, but also doesn't seem to align with the rest of the industry, which is finding their sweet spot. We're finding Stellantis, a lot of their products, whether it's Jeep, Ram, Dodge, are pricing their vehicles that just don't make sense when compared to a lot of their competition. And when I look at this lineup of full-size HD trucks here by Ram, these are the vehicles that have not actually been selling all that well. And when we look at the Wranglers over here, there's still a pretty good jag of these vehicles, and most of these are not even 25s. Most of these are still 23s and 24s sitting on the lot. They've all been here a long time. And when you look at the day's supply based on Cox Automotive data, you're finding that most of these vehicles owned by Stellantis have been on the lot at least double what the average industry is, where we're talking the average is about 80 days supply, and Toyota and Honda being down around 30 to 40 days supply. A lot of these vehicles are up in that 130, 140 day supply and beyond. Really, the only brand suffering any worse than Stellantis right now is Jaguar, and they've pretty much shot themselves in the foot with their latest marketing attempt. We're seeing another effort by manufacturers to go the wrong way, miss the focus completely, and blow themselves out of the water. Now, since 2021, when Carlos Tavares took over the helm of Stellantis, there was promises to bring a vehicle manufacturer that was going to be fresh, feisty, and it was going to sell to the masses. Well, it feels like recently, with all of the challenges, the internal struggles with a lot of the top players and the VPs within the organization, they finally asked him to step down. Now, Carlos in 21 was looking to be the player to turn this brand around, and of course wasn't planning to retire until 2026. But here we are in 2024, and now the word on the street is Carlos Tavares is finally gone. Now, allegedly, there's all kinds of dispute within the organization, and a lot of the top players were actually asking him to look aside, move aside. They were going to basically collectively, as a group, take care of the organization, until at which point they were going to replace the CEO with somebody entirely different. But cost aside, whether people can afford these or not, many people just can't come to grips with the cost increases that we've seen in the last 5 years. 40, 50, 60% on the price of a lot of these vehicles. I mean, we look at Jeep Wranglers, like here we have a Willys. It's a very basic low-level vehicle, but we've seen these go up at least by 40, 50% in the last few years. And that's insult to injury when you consider how cheap these vehicles are to begin with. And I personally owned one of these. I had back in the day a TJ 4-liter with a manual gearbox. It was a regular with a hard top, actually had the dual tops. And I bought that thing, it was 3 years old, slightly used, very low Ks on it. I remember years ago when I bought that vehicle for $12,000, slightly used. Brand new, I think it was around 20 grand. Now we're finding that base vehicle going up around $45,000, $50,000. And to get into something like this, we're talking vehicles that are 65, 70, $75,000, and even some of the more premium spec vehicles are up around $80,000, $85,000, and that's not even the 392 version there either. Another big problem that we've seen in the last year or so is the UAW. They negotiated with Stellantis, got the great deal that they all wanted, but unfortunately, I know Stellantis has to live up to that. And as a matter of fact, the plant that was supposed to produce one of their most cost-effective vehicles, the classic Ram, has all been more or less closed. Manufacturing workers, frontline workers, were losing jobs. We're seeing thousands of workers throughout the last couple of years lose their jobs, all for the sake of trimming costs, cutting the fat. But unfortunately, maybe that deal, maybe that negotiations deals with UAW was just enough to put the nail in the coffin. And unfortunately for Stellantis, his writing's been on the wall for quite some time. With battles with the UAW, the union, there's been challenges, mudslinging back and forth. It's clear that nobody's happy in the organization. With the brand Stellantis also really pushing hard to produce a lot of these electric vehicles and advance the electrified market, it feels a lot of people allege that they've pretty much given up on their North American market. And sure, yes, you can get more North American vehicles here, but all they do is keep jacking up the prices and lacking innovation. Sure, as well, they were promising to bring electric vehicles to the market, but how do you plug these Jeeps in when you're out in the bush? Plug-in hybrid vehicles or electric Jeeps? Yes, we're going to plug it into a tree. That's what a lot of people were saying. And it just doesn't make sense for your common garden variety North American buyer. Feels like they were left out to dry with a lot of these products that are lacking innovation and certainly just don't make sense and don't align with the buyers that they were targeted for. And then you talk about Ram, which was a vehicle intended for the masses. Garden variety working people like you and I. Garden variety lunchbox Joe, meant to go to work, take our truck to work, tow the trailer on the weekend to the camp, to the lake, as well as use it for work during the weekday. That was a versatile vehicle that the North American middle-class worker like us was designed to drive. But they've all but pretty much priced them out of the market. I can't afford the prices of a lot of these vehicles, and I know a lot of customers and a lot of buyers, potentially would-be buyers, would look at these vehicles, but they just can't afford it or can't justify the prices. Like a lot of this inventory that's piling up, there's a good reason that it's piling up. I mean, let's take a look. You've got Laramies, those are big bucks. You've got a regular 4x4, of course this one's pretty light duty. You've got chrome bumpers, but you'll look over here, you get the Bighorn, you get the painted bumper. It's a pretty nice vehicle. The base unit, chrome. Of course, this one here, you get the nice blacked wheels. Definitely like that. Taillights look a little bit different as well. And you'll notice as you look down, people can't even afford these base trim. I mean, you get the base plastic handles here. Here you have the painted handles. It looks great. They're both diesels, of course, here. But even this working version right here is a costly unit. And a lot of people can't even afford this. But try some of these expensive trim levels. Right here's a top trim level. We have a Ram. This one is clearly a Cummins diesel driven. You've got the big mega cab design here, beautiful gloss rims. I love the looks of these things, and it's a 3500 HD. Of course, Cummins, big extended mirrors, LEDs everywhere. Yes, you get sunroof up there. And you get some other great details. You get the big display inside, heated, cooled, ventilated, big, beautiful truck. Everything's painted, looks wonderful. How much? How much is this unit right here? Well, this one looks like a limited mega cab night edition. This is pretty much the top pops. And this one, oh, what are you? $124,000. That's right, 124 grand. Yeah, you saw that right. I saw that right. That is absolutely bananas. I can't even, like, what are they thinking? And while they might feel justified when they compare that to the Denali HD 3500 Ultimate, is also in a very similar price point. So unfortunately, even the HD trucks aren't necessarily that far out of kilter. The point is, it's also a value proposition. A lot of these vehicles, people just don't feel like they're getting the value add. But with that said, GM's not selling their HD trucks all that quickly either, especially at 125 grand. You start throwing on the extras, floor mats, paint protection film, taxes. Next thing you're at $150,000. Who's buying that? You know, more writing on the wall. Earlier this year, they also closed down their training grounds and sold that off, selling assets. The doghouse, they're looking at trimming costs internally, getting rid of any unnecessary expenditures, cutting workers, thousands and thousands of workers, closing plants. I mean, it's all starting to sound very familiar territory, isn't it? Nobody likes to use the B word, but bankruptcy feels, to me, in my own personal opinion, just looming around the corner. When we're getting things like a lot of manufacturers having to almost give their products away, incentivize thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in some case, the CEO is getting punted. That's usually one of the biggest signs when they're in scramble mode, when the CEO gets pushed out the door. We've seen this in other organizations, and it doesn't begin and end with the automotive sector, but clearly Stellantis is in a tough spot. Conversely, Maribera over in GM is doing great. She's probably getting huge profits, and as well, things are lovely over there. Ford, they're sort of stalled somewhere in the middle, and they're also stuck with heavy inventory. So not all is well and throughout the entire industry. It's just that Stellantis has become so disconnected and discombobulated from the rest of the buyers out there. They clearly missed the mark. I mean, a Jeep like this, in my opinion, should be $30,000 top, fully loaded. Based on the level of technology and the innovations behind that vehicle, the research and development was done 50 years ago. Why are they still charging this kind of money for these vehicles? Because they can? Well, things are about to change. And now people are taking the opinion of, you know what, look at all this inventory. Look at, we've got Durangos, we've got Jeeps, we've got all these trucks, and we've got a lot more vehicles showing up. So the attitude is, let it rot. And a lot of people are just at that point. You know, when we combine that with the high interest rates that are still just hovering around, interest rates that have not changed that much since about a year ago. Unfortunately, we're also seeing repossessions up. So this is all scaring buyers. Repossessions now are at an all-time high, and we're approaching 7% on subprime and about 3 to 4% on prime buyers. That is scaring a lot of people. The politics have also done a switch, and it leaves everybody scratching their heads wondering what's in the future. Everybody's holding their money close to their chest, and nobody wants to spend. This with high interest rates, of course, with high vehicle prices, this could not be a worse time in Stellantis history to just try to keep afloat with high prices that are just out of touch with reality. And the latest is the US Energy Department is looking at lending a small loan, $7.5 billion, to a joint effort between Stellantis as well as Samsung to build 2 battery manufacturing facilities within Indiana in the United States. A clear indication that they're forging ahead, and the effort is to move to full transition to electrified vehicles, when in fact we know the North American market is slow on the uptake to buying those types of vehicles, and there's a strong resistance to buying vehicles that are hybrid, EVs, especially when we're talking about trucks, Jeeps, full-size SUVs. While there is a market, there's a small market and early adopters buying those types of vehicles, the majority of the middle class, Stellantis owners, for example, of Jeeps, Rams, Dodges, are just looking for a simple mode of transportation, including internal combustion engines. The real question is, does this small $7.5 billion loan represent more of a loan and pay back at higher interest rates? Or is it just another in a roundabout way of a bit of a bailout? I'm not sure. I'd like to hear more thoughts from you down in the comment section below, but that is the latest rumors that there's money coming from the government to Stellantis to help them with this transition. And more indicators that we're about to see some serious changes, and individual dealers are struggling with sales. If you're not selling these vehicles at the dealerships, then they don't need to make them at the manufacturing facilities. We've seen closures and we've seen shutdowns from Jeep Wranglers like this. We've seen the Grand Cherokees, and those plants put stop hold on obviously manufacturing because they were not selling. But on top of it, we're seeing declining sales. Approximately 17% decline in November alone in North America, and Italy is seeing about 24.5% declining sales. And on top of it, they're looking at laying off thousands of workers in Italy and North America. We just saw a few hundred here just a few short weeks ago. So it feels like this dispute that there was at the boardroom table, they ultimately basically said sayonara. And Carlos Tavares has now got his official walking papers. He looks to be hitting the road, and they want to replace him, because that's the writing on the wall. When you're seeing the CEO take the walking papers, that's usually the first indication that things are in serious dire straits. A big part of the problem, the advancement of electrification, the strong Chinese market, which is owning a lot of the electric vehicles, and Ford and GM are also feeling the burn in competition with those manufacturers in China. But on top of it, the pricing of a lot of these vehicles are just so far out of touch and out of reach for your common layperson who's actually intended to drive these vehicles. Just means that they've totally missed the mark. And is it any wonder that these brands are in serious hurt, serious distress? Each one of these manufacturers and each one of these particular dealerships is in serious trouble right now. They're going to have a tough time keeping the lights on. People are not coming in here, walking in here. The foot traffic is down, sales are down. We're seeing everything going down except for the prices. Sure, while they're offering some basic incentives, that's only to get you in the door. At the end of the day, do you think you'll ever see a price on these vehicles here where you can get into another nice HD truck here for 60 grand again, or a Jeep like these? Do you think you'll ever be able to get into a Wrangler at a cost of $35,000, $40,000 for a full trim level with hard top and 4 doors and the extras? Not likely. So unless something drastically changes in their business model, there's a high probability of dealerships closing, and the manufacturers have to flirt with the B word. And with all of that said, you want to check out that video. GM is also going through their struggles, but they're about to jack up their prices. Would you believe it? Sales haven't been that strong, and yet they're cranking up their prices. It's going to be quite the crap show. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.